Welcome back, American coin hunter. Imagine holding a simple brown copper coin in your hand. Something most people would throw into a drawer, a cup holder, or even onto the ground without a second thought. Yet hidden inside that small round piece of metal could be a story so powerful, so mysterious, and so valuable that it challenges everything we think we know about money, rarity, and forgotten treasure. Because the 1994 D1 cent coin is not just a penny. It is a silent witness to American history, industrial change, minting pressure, human error, and collector obsession, and in very rare circumstances, it has been connected to values whispered in the hundreds of millions of dollars. Numbers so large they seem impossible for a coin that once bought nothing more than a moment of time at a cash register. The year 1994 sits in a fascinating place in United States coinage history, because it was a time when the Lincoln cent had already transitioned away from its original high copper content and into the copper-plated zinc composition that many collectors criticize today. Yet this transition itself created chaos at the mint, especially at the Denver Mint, where millions upon millions of coins were struck under intense pressure to meet circulation demand. And whenever speed, volume, and machinery collide, errors are born. And some of those errors are so rare, so extreme, and so poorly understood that they become legends rather than mere mistakes. The 1994 D penny carries the iconic Lincoln portrait on the obverse, a design that traces its roots back to 1909, honoring the 100th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth. And by 1994, that design had already passed through decades of subtle changes, tooling modifications, hub replacements, and die polishing that altered the way Lincoln's face appeared from year to year, sometimes making him look sharper, sometimes flatter, sometimes ghostly and weak, and sometimes astonishingly bold, depending on the die state and striking quality. And when collectors examine a 1994 D cent under magnification, they are not just looking at Lincoln. They are reading a mechanical fingerprint left behind by the mint itself. On the reverse side, the Lincoln Memorial still stood proudly, years before the shield reverse would replace it, and within those tiny columns, steps, and architectural lines lie countless opportunities for error, doubling, misalignment, die deterioration, and striking anomalies that can turn an ordinary 1 cent coin into a specimen worth thousands, tens of thousands, or in the most extreme and controversial cases, values rumored to reach unimaginable heights, including claims of combined market valuations approaching $282 million when ultra-rare error examples are considered collectively by high-end investors and private collectors. The official weight of a standard 1994 D penny is approximately 2.5 grams, composed of 97.5% zinc with a thin copper plating, making up the remaining 2.5%. Yet weight alone is one of the first red flags that collectors look for, because off-metal strikes, wrong planchets, incomplete plating, or transitional blanks can cause the weight to fall outside normal tolerance, sometimes dipping well below or rising above expected measurements. And when a 1994 D cent weighs closer to 3.1 grams, alarms go off immediately, because that suggests the possibility of a copper planchet error, something that theoretically should not exist, but has been documented in other years under extraordinary circumstances. Errors are the beating heart of the 1994 D penny's mystique, because while millions were produced, only a microscopic fraction exhibit dramatic mint errors, and among those, only a handful rise to the level of elite collectible status, such as double die obverse where Lincoln's date, motto, or profile appears visibly doubled, not from damage, but from a misaligned die during the hubbing process, creating true doubling that cannot be replicated after the coin leaves the mint. And when these doubled features are bold, separated, and consistent, their value skyrockets. Another powerful error category includes off-center strikes, where the coin was not properly seated in the striking chamber, resulting in missing portions of the design, sometimes exposing a crescent of blank planchet. And when the date and mint mark remain fully visible while a large percentage of the design is missing, collectors become intensely interested, especially when the off-center strike exceeds 50%, a threshold often considered highly desirable. Then there are die cracks, die breaks, and cuds, which form when a die becomes damaged from repeated strikes, causing raised blobs of metal on the finished coin, and in extreme cases, entire sections of the design disappear or warp, creating monstrous one-of-a-kind appearances that look almost melted or distorted, and because dies are replaced quickly once severe damage is noticed. These coins exist in tiny numbers, sometimes only a single confirmed example. The mint mark itself, the small d beneath the date, has also been the subject of intense scrutiny because repunched mint marks, filled mint marks, tilted mint marks, and even missing mint marks have been reported. And while some are minor, others represent genuine minting anomalies that elevate the coin far beyond face value. And when combined with other errors on the same coin, values multiply exponentially. Rather than add incrementally point, one of the most controversial and talked about error types associated with the 1994 D cent is the alleged mule or wrong die pairing, where an obverse die intended for one coin is paired with a reverse die intended for another, something exceedingly rare in modern U.S. coinage. Yet rumors persist within private collecting circles of experimental or undocumented pairings that never officially entered circulation but may have escaped through internal channels. And while these claims are fiercely debated, the very existence of such speculation fuels the mythology surrounding this coin. Condition plays an enormous role as well, because a mint error in poor condition is still valuable, but a mint error in pristine, uncirculated, or mint state condition becomes exponentially more desirable, especially when graded by major certification services. And when a 1994 D error penny receives a high mint state grade combined with a rare error designation, it becomes a trophy piece, something that wealthy collectors compete for behind closed doors rather than in public auctions. The idea of a $282 million market value does not refer to a single ordinary 1994 D penny pulled from a pocket, but rather to the cumulative estimated valuation of the rarest known error examples, private transactions, institutional holdings, and speculative investment portfolios tied to this date and mint combination. And while critics argue that such numbers are inflated, history has repeatedly shown that markets are driven as much by belief and narrative as by metal and mintage, and when belief takes hold, prices follow. Historically, the Lincoln cent has always held a special place in American culture, being the first U.S. coin to feature a real person rather than an allegorical figure. And by 1994, Lincoln had become not just a president on a coin, but a symbol of continuity, endurance, and national memory. And that emotional connection adds intangible value that pure bullion coins can never replicate. The Denver Mint itself has a long history of producing coins under challenging conditions, and during the early 1990s, production demands were immense, leading to extended die usage, rushed quality control, and increased probability of errors slipping through. And when you hold a 1994 D penny, you are holding a product of that pressure, whether it is ordinary or extraordinary. Collectors who search rolls, jars, and inherited collections today are not just hoping to find copper. They are hunting for anomalies, subtle clues like doubling on the date, unusual thickness, strange textures, or color variations that suggest improper plating. And many discoveries are made not by professionals, but by everyday people who decided to look closer instead of spending the coin. The story does not end there, because once the 1994 D 1 cent coin entered circulation, its journey truly began, passing from hand to hand, register to register, bank to bank, quietly blending in with billions of other pennies. And that anonymity is exactly what allowed some of the most extraordinary examples to survive untouched for years, even decades, without anyone realizing what they were holding. And this long period of neglect is one of the key reasons why the coin's legend has grown so powerful among modern collectors. As time passed, the copper plating on many 1994 D pennies began to show signs of wear, revealing the gray zinc core beneath. Yet in some rare cases, the plating behaved abnormally from the very beginning, either appearing unusually thick, thin, bubbled, peeling, or missing entirely. And these plating errors are not cosmetic accidents, but mechanical failures in the electroplating process. And when verified, they can command serious premiums, especially when the exposed zinc creates dramatic visual contrast that immediately signals something is wrong. One particularly fascinating category involves split plating and retained plating fragments, where sheets of copper partially detach from the zinc core but remain connected, creating strange folded or cracked surfaces that almost look like scales or torn skin. And because each of these coins is visually unique, They are often treated as one-of-a-kind artifacts rather than standard varieties, and uniqueness is one of the most powerful forces in any collector market. Another layer of intrigue surrounds die deterioration doubling, a phenomenon often misunderstood by beginners but deeply studied by experts, because as dies wear down, letters and numbers can appear thickened, smeared, or doubled in a way that mimics true doubled dies. And while many of these are not considered premium errors, some advanced die states are so extreme that they cross into collectible territory, especially when combined with other anomalies like cracks or cuds. The date 1994 itself can appear in wildly different forms depending on die condition, sometimes sharp and narrow, sometimes bloated and distorted, and in rare cases, partially missing or fused. And when these variations occur alongside a strong Denver mint mark, collectors pay attention because patterns begin to emerge that suggest limited die runs rather than random damage. Weight analysis continues to be one of the most important tools in authenticating high-value examples, because a coin that appears copper-rich but weighs only 2.5 grams may simply be plated, while a coin weighing closer to traditional bronze standards immediately raises questions about planchet origin. And when a 1994 D cent weighs outside tolerance and passes metallurgical testing, it becomes a scientific mystery as much as a numismatic one. That the conversation around extreme valuations often centers on private sales rather than public auctions, because the most valuable error coins rarely appear on open markets, instead changing hands quietly between wealthy collectors, funds, and institutions who prefer discretion. And when price information leaks out, it often does so through rumors, partial disclosures, or insurance valuations rather than clear receipts. This secrecy feeds speculation, and speculation feeds value, creating a feedback loop where belief alone can inflate perceived worth, especially when combined with genuine rarity. And while skeptics demand hard proof, collectors who operate at the highest levels understand that markets are not always rational. They are emotional, competitive, and driven by prestige. Prestige plays a massive role in the Lincoln cent market, because owning the finest known example of a rare error is not just about money. It is about status, recognition, and legacy. And when a collector acquires a top-tier 1994 D error penny, they are buying a story that will be told long after the transaction is forgotten. Grading services have amplified this effect by encapsulating coins in protective holders that permanently document their condition and error attribution. And once a coin is certified, it becomes part of the historical record, referenced in population reports and census data that collectors study obsessively. And when population numbers remain extremely low, demand intensifies. Some error types associated with the 1994 D penny are so rare that fewer than 10 examples are believed to exist, and when supply is that limited, price becomes almost irrelevant, because sellers can dictate terms, and buyers must decide whether owning the coin is worth whatever is asked. And in many cases, it is. The broader economic environment also influences how these coins are perceived, because during times of uncertainty, tangible assets gain appeal, and coins offer a unique blend of portability, durability, and historical significance, making them attractive to investors who want something real, something they can hold, rather than numbers on a screen. For many collectors, the hunt itself is just as important as the prize, spending hours searching rolls, examining coins under magnification, learning the subtle signs of authenticity, and every time a 1994 D penny turns up, there is a spark of possibility. Because even if most are ordinary, the knowledge that extraordinary examples exist keeps hope alive. Educational resources, online forums, and social media have expanded awareness of modern error coins, allowing discoveries to spread quickly. And when a new 1994 D error is posted, analyzed, and confirmed, it reignites interest across the entire market, sometimes causing price spikes even for lesser examples. Yet despite all the excitement, caution is essential, because damage is often mistaken for error, and many coins that look unusual are the result of post-mint abuse rather than minting mistakes. And separating the two requires experience, patience, and sometimes professional verification. This tension between discovery and deception is part of what makes the field so compelling, because every coin is a puzzle, and every puzzle carries risk, but also reward. and the 1994 D penny embodies that balance perfectly. As years go by, fewer untouched examples remain in circulation, gradually increasing scarcity, and as knowledge spreads, the chance of a major undiscovered error shrinks. But it never disappears completely, because history has proven time and again that surprises still happen. In the end, the 1994 D1 cent coin is a reminder that value is not always obvious, that mistakes can become treasures, and that even the smallest objects can carry stories, wealth, and wonder far beyond their humble appearance. And as long as people continue to look closely, question assumptions, and search with curiosity, the legend of this penny will continue to grow. The deeper collectors go into the world of the 1994 D1 cent coin, the more they realize that this penny is not just a product of metal and machinery, but a mirror reflecting human behavior, patience, obsession, and the desire to uncover hidden value where others see nothing. And this psychological element is just as important as the physical characteristics of the coin itself, because without belief, rarity has no voice. Many longtime collectors describe the first time they truly understood the importance of errors as a turning point, when a coin that looked ordinary suddenly revealed something strange under magnification, a line where there should be none, a doubling of a letter, a missing detail. And in that moment, the 1994 D penny transformed from spare change into a mystery worth solving. And that emotional shift is what pulls people deeper into the hobby. The manufacturing process of the penny in 1994 was highly automated, but not flawless, because even the most advanced machinery relies on alignment, calibration, and human oversight. And when production lines run continuously, microscopic deviations can snowball into dramatic results, creating coins that were never meant to exist. And once those coins enter circulation, they become time capsules of that failure point. One of the most dramatic and visually striking errors associated with this date involves broad strikes, where the collar that normally constrains the coin during striking fails, allowing the metal to spread outward, creating a wider than normal coin with distorted lettering and an incomplete rim. And when the design remains sharp despite the distortion, collectors recognize it immediately as a legitimate mint error rather than damage. Another category that fuels intense interest is rotated dies, where the obverse and reverse are misaligned, sometimes by dramatic degrees. And when a 1994 D penny is rotated far beyond the normal tolerance, it becomes a curiosity that demands attention, especially when the rotation exceeds 90 degrees. Something rarely seen in modern sense struck through errors add yet another layer of intrigue, occurring when foreign materials such as grease, cloth, or metal shavings interfere with the strike, leaving behind ghostly impressions, missing letters, or textured surfaces. And because the obstructing material is often destroyed or removed, the resulting coin becomes the only evidence that the error ever happened. Collectors often debate which error type holds the greatest long-term potential, but many agree that coins combining multiple errors are among the most desirable, because the probability of two independent failures occurring on the same strike is exponentially lower, and when such a coin is confirmed, it becomes a centerpiece rather than just another addition. The role of documentation cannot be overstated, because coins with clear provenance, especially those discovered early or traced back to known collections, carry an added layer of credibility. And when a 1994 D-era penny has a documented history, it becomes easier to justify high valuations, even those that seem unbelievable to outsiders. The internet expanded in the late 1990s and early 2000s. Knowledge about error coins spread rapidly, and what once required access to specialized journals and clubs became available to anyone with curiosity. And this democratization of information brought new eyes to the 1994 D penny, increasing both discoveries and competition. Competition, in turn, drives prices, because when multiple collectors want the same rare item, the market responds aggressively. And in some cases, emotional bidding pushes values far beyond rational expectations, especially when the coin is perceived as a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. The idea of a collective market valuation reaching into the hundreds of millions is not about everyday examples, but about the top tier, the finest known, the rarest confirmed, and the most visually dramatic pieces that exist in such limited numbers that they effectively have no comparables. And in markets like that, traditional pricing models collapse. Insurance valuations often play a role in shaping public perception, because when a collector insures a coin for an extremely high amount, that number enters the narrative, even if it does not reflect an actual sale, and over time, repeated references to such figures solidify them in the collective imagination. The 1994 D penny also benefits from being part of the Lincoln cent lineage, one of the most widely collected and emotionally resonant series in American numismatics. And this broad base of interest ensures that demand never disappears, even as tastes shift within the hobby. For many people, the penny represents beginnings, childhood collections, and the first coin they ever examined closely. And when that emotional connection intersects with the possibility of extraordinary value, it creates a powerful magnet that pulls new collectors into the search. Stories continue to circulate of rare error coins being discovered by accident, sometimes by people with no prior interest in coins, and these stories reinforce the belief that treasure can still be found in plain sight. And that belief is one of the strongest drivers of ongoing interest in the 1994 D cent. Even skeptics who doubt extreme valuations often concede that the coin occupies a unique place in modern numismatics, because it represents the idea that modern coins are not immune to rarity, that even in an age of mass production, individuality can emerge through error as the years progress. The supply of undiscovered examples shrinks, but the pool of collectors grows, creating a widening gap between availability and demand. And this imbalance is the fundamental engine of value growth, in the quiet moments when a collector sits alone with a magnifying glass, turning a 1994 D penny slowly under the light. They are participating in a tradition that stretches back centuries, the search for meaning, beauty, and worth in small objects. And whether or not the coin in their hand is extraordinary, the act itself connects them to something larger. And so the legend continues, not just because of metal or money, but because of human curiosity, the desire to know, to find, and to believe that something overlooked can change everything. As attention around the 1994 D1 cent coin continued to grow, a subtle shift occurred in the way collectors evaluated modern pennies, because this coin helped prove that rarity does not always announce itself through age alone, but through circumstance. And once that idea took hold, every detail began to matter more than ever before. From the sharpness of Lincoln's jawline to the tiniest distortions hidden within the memorial columns, advanced collectors began using higher magnification, digital microscopes, and precise scales, turning what was once a casual hobby into a form of forensic investigation. And under this level of scrutiny, the 1994 D penny revealed layers of complexity that few would have imagined possible in such a small object, including micro-doubling, flow lines, and subtle metal displacement patterns that told stories of stress and strain at the moment of impact. Flow lines, in particular, became a subject of fascination because they reveal the direction and force of metal movement during striking. And when those lines behave abnormally, curving or breaking in unexpected ways, they can indicate unusual striking conditions, sometimes tied to known error types, sometimes representing anomalies still not fully classified. The surface texture of some 1994 D cents also raised eyebrows, with granular or pebbled finishes appearing on certain examples. And while some of these were later attributed to environmental damage, others resisted easy explanation, suggesting contamination in the metal or irregularities during planchet preparation. Planchet preparation itself is an often overlooked stage where many errors originate, because before a coin is struck, the blank metal disc must be rolled, punched, cleaned, and sometimes annealed, and any disruption during these steps can leave behind defects that only become visible after striking, creating coins that appear strange even though the strike itself was normal. In rare cases, lamination errors appear where a portion of the metal peels away due to impurities or bonding failures. And when these laminations are dramatic and stable, they are highly sought after, especially when they do not obscure the date or mint mark, preserving the coin's identity. Another phenomenon that captivated collectors is the appearance of die polish lines, sometimes so heavy that they alter the appearance of entire design elements. And while light polish lines are common, extreme examples can blur details, remove parts of letters, or create mirrored fields, adding to the coin's visual drama. The Denver Mint's production practices in 1994 have been studied extensively, with researchers examining mintage figures, die lifespans, and quality control reports to better understand how certain errors could have occurred. And while many questions remain unanswered, this research has deepened appreciation for the complexity behind what appears to be a simple coin. One of the most compelling aspects of the 1994 D-penny story is the way it bridges generations of collectors, appealing both to those who grew up with wheat cents and those who entered the hobby through roll hunting in the modern era. And this cross-generational appeal strengthens its position in the market. Market behavior around this coin has shown patterns familiar to other collectible assets, including periods of rapid appreciation, followed by consolidation, and then renewed interest sparked by new discoveries or media attention. And each cycle brings new participants into the fold. Media coverage, especially online videos and forums, has played a crucial role in shaping public perception, because when a single dramatic error coin is showcased, it can ignite widespread interest almost overnight, sending thousands of people searching through their change jars. This surge of attention often leads to a flood of submissions to grading services, most of which turn out to be normal coins. But every so often, a genuine rarity emerges, reinforcing the idea that the hunt is worth the effort. Collectors who focus on condition rarity, seeking the highest possible grades for ordinary coins, also play a role in the ecosystem, because pristine examples of common coins can still command premiums, and when combined with even minor errors, their appeal increases significantly. The emotional aspect of ownership cannot be ignored, because for many collectors, the value of a coin is not solely financial, but tied to the experience of discovery, the hours of study, and the personal story behind how it was found. And these intangible factors often influence willingness to pay as more data accumulates. Population reports help clarify just how rare certain error types truly are. And when numbers remain stubbornly low year after year, confidence in long-term value grows, attracting more serious investment interest. The 1994 D-penny, once dismissed as pocket change, has thus become a symbol of modern numismatic potential, illustrating how even in an age of mass production, individuality and rarity can still emerge in unexpected ways. Every new discovery adds another thread to its story, weaving a narrative that is constantly evolving, shaped by human curiosity, technological tools, and the enduring appeal of finding something extraordinary where none was expected. And as long as people continue to look closely, question assumptions, and share what they find, the 1994 D1 cent coin will remain not just a coin, but a living chapter in the ongoing story of American numismatics. With each passing year, the conversation surrounding the 1994 D1 cent coin grows richer and more layered, because time itself acts as a filter, slowly removing the ordinary examples from circulation while allowing the extraordinary ones to rise to the surface. And this natural process of attrition quietly increases scarcity without any dramatic announcement, making surviving high-quality and error examples even more desirable. Collectors who specialize in long-term trends often point out that modern coins like the 1994 D-penny are only now entering the age where serious reevaluation begins, because enough time has passed for patterns to emerge, yet not so much time that discovery has completely stopped. And this balance creates a unique moment where knowledge, opportunity, and curiosity intersect. The role of technology continues to evolve, with advanced imaging, X-ray fluorescence testing, and digital databases allowing collectors to analyze coins in ways that were impossible just a few decades ago. And when these tools are applied to suspected error coins, they can confirm or refute theories with remarkable precision, strengthening confidence in genuine rarities. This scientific approach has helped separate myth from reality, yet it has also revealed that some stories once dismissed as exaggeration may contain elements of truth, particularly when it comes to unusual metal compositions or undocumented production anomalies that defy simple explanation. The human element remains central to all of this, because behind every discovery is a person who chose to look closer, to question why something seemed different, and to invest time and energy into understanding it. And these individual acts of curiosity collectively shape the broader narrative of the coin. Communities of collectors, both online and offline, serve as living archives of shared knowledge, where photographs, measurements, and experiences are exchanged, debated, and refined, and through this collaborative process, understanding deepens and standards become clearer. Disagreements are common, especially when high values are involved, because skepticism acts as a counterbalance to enthusiasm, forcing claims to be supported by evidence. And this tension ultimately strengthens the field by preventing it from drifting too far into fantasy. The psychological thrill of the hunt cannot be overstated, because the possibility that a life-changing coin could be hiding in plain sight keeps people engaged long after logic says the odds are low, and this emotional investment sustains interest even during quiet periods. As collectors age, they begin to think about legacy, about which pieces will define their collections and be remembered. And a top-tier 1994 era penny fits naturally into that narrative, representing both modern rarity and historical significance. Auction houses, sensing this shift, have gradually begun to feature modern-era coins more prominently, placing them alongside classic rarities, and this visibility further legitimizes their status and attracts new bidders who might otherwise have overlooked them. The interplay between supply, demand, emotion, and storytelling creates a dynamic market where prices can move quickly, sometimes unexpectedly, and those movements reinforce the idea that value is not static, but shaped by perception as much as by fact. For younger collectors, the 1994 penny offers an accessible entry point, a coin they might realistically find themselves, unlike older rarities locked away in museums or private vaults. And this accessibility fuels grassroots interest that keeps the hobby alive. Educational outreach, whether through videos, articles, or informal mentorship, ensures that knowledge continues to pass from one generation to the next, preserving the skills needed to recognize genuine errors and avoid costly mistakes. The simple act of holding a penny and realizing it could be something more transforms the way people see everyday objects, encouraging mindfulness and attention in a world that often moves too fast to notice small details. In this way, the 1994 1-cent coin becomes more than a collectible. It becomes a teacher, reminding us that value is often hidden beneath the surface, waiting for someone patient enough to uncover it. And as long as that lesson resonates, as long as people continue to search, learn, and share, the story of this coin will continue to evolve, carrying with it the dreams, debates, and discoveries of everyone who dares to look closely at what others overlook. As awareness spreads even further, the 1994 1-cent coin begins to occupy a space that few modern coins ever reach, a place where it is discussed not only among collectors, but also among investors, historians, and storytellers, because its journey from ordinary pocket change to a subject of intense scrutiny mirrors larger themes about value, chance, and human attention. Many experts note that what truly elevates this coin is not a single defining feature, but the convergence of timing, production volume, error potential, and cultural familiarity, because millions of people have handled pennies, yet very few have stopped to consider how fragile perfection really is when machines operate at such enormous scale. The Denver Mint in 1994 was under constant demand to produce coins efficiently, and efficiency often means pushing equipment close to its limits. And when limits are tested, metal behaves unpredictably, dies fatigue, and tolerances blur, creating opportunities for anomalies that would never occur in a slower, more controlled environment. These conditions produced a spectrum of outcomes, from barely noticeable quirks to dramatic visual distortions. And it is this spectrum that keeps collectors engaged, because each coin exists somewhere along it, inviting evaluation and interpretation rather than offering simple answers. Interpretation itself becomes an art, because determining whether something is a legitimate mint error or post-mint damage requires not only technical knowledge, but intuition developed through experience. And seasoned collectors often describe this skill as something they can feel as much as analyze. The emotional payoff of being right, of correctly identifying a genuine rarity, is powerful, and that reward reinforces the desire to keep searching, to keep learning, and to keep believing that the next discovery could be even more significant than the last. As collections change hands through inheritance or sale, coins that were once tucked away re-enter the market, sometimes surprising experts who thought all major examples had already been documented. And these moments remind everyone that the story is never truly complete. The concept of value itself evolves as markets mature, because what was once considered excessive can later seem conservative, especially when supply remains fixed and demand continues to grow. And this dynamic fuels speculation about where the upper limits might ultimately lie. The figure often discussed in connection with this coin, the collective valuation reaching into the hundreds of millions, serves less as a precise measurement and more as a symbol of how far perception has shifted from dismissing modern pennies entirely to recognizing their potential significance. Critics rightly caution against exaggeration. Yet, even they acknowledge that the attention paid to this coin has reshaped conversations about modern numismatics, encouraging deeper study and greater respect for coins produced within living memory. This shift has broader implications because it suggests that future generations may look back at today's overlooked objects with the same fascination reserved for older relics. And the 1994 D penny stands as an early example of that transformation. In classrooms, clubs, and casual conversations, the coin becomes a gateway topic, an accessible way to introduce concepts like minting technology, error classification, and market psychology, making learning feel tangible rather than abstract. For many, the first time they hear that a penny could be worth more than its weight in gold is a moment of disbelief, followed by curiosity. And that curiosity often leads to deeper exploration, expanding awareness of history and craftsmanship. The narrative surrounding this coin is constantly refined as new information emerges, old assumptions are challenged, and collective understanding deepens. And this ongoing process keeps the subject alive rather than frozen in time. Ultimately, the 1994 D1 cent coin represents the idea that significance is not predetermined, that objects gain meaning through interaction, interpretation, and shared attention, and that even the smallest artifacts can carry stories far larger than themselves, as long as people continue to search their change, study their finds, and share what they learn. The quiet copper-colored coin will continue its journey, not just through pockets and collections, but through imagination and memory, proving again and again that value often begins where curiosity takes hold.